Hello, I'm Sheryl McCarthy of the City University of New York. Welcome to One to One. It's often said that raising a daughter is harder than raising a son. Why? Because from an early age, females are in constant danger from predatory males, from mean girls, from a double standard that requires them to be thin and pretty, from the threat of unwanted pregnancy and the fear of being labeled a slut, and from being told too often to sit down, be quiet, and smile. Alida Nugent writes with humor and insight about the perils of growing up female and about how her own experiences led her to becoming a feminist. Nugent is the creator of the Frenemy, a female-centric comedy blog, and describes herself as someone who lives in Brooklyn, wears dark lipstick, eats sandwiches, and tries to find bars that serve martinis. She is also the author of You Don't Have to Like Me, Essays on Growing Up, Speaking Out, and Finding Feminism, which has just been published under the Plume imprint of Penguin Random House. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
This is your second book. The first was entitled Don't Worry, It Gets Worse. Would you describe yourself as a humorist?
I guess so. I always kind of struggle with the idea of what my job is. I'm supposed to call myself, I guess I'm an author that writes comedy memoirs. So I think humorist sounds tighter.
Okay. I'm curious about your background. Where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? And how'd you wind up in Brooklyn?
Well, I grew up about an hour outside the city in Westchester County, and then I went to college at Emerson College in Boston. And because the school was so kind of leaned towards the arts and entertainment, a lot of people ended up in Los Angeles or New York after graduation, and I had always wanted to live in New York City when I graduated. So I decided I moved home first for a little bit, and then once I saved enough money to live in New York, which is usually impossible and probably is, I managed to rent an apartment in New York.
Okay. What was your motivation for writing this book?
When I first started writing about 4 or 5 years ago, the blog that got the first book, I wouldn't have considered myself a feminist. And it was something that happened probably about midway through the first book. And it was just this idea. And as I was writing the first book, I sort of kind of came to terms with that and sort of started defining it and learning more about it. By the time the first book was done, I knew that was what I wanted to talk about for my second book. I knew that it was something that was going to be a conversation. I knew that it was starting to become a conversation, on the internet. And so by that time, I knew it was what I really wanted to write. And by the time I started writing the proposal, I was ready to write it because I think it's a big issue and it's hard to write about.
I hear all the time, and you say as much, that a lot of young women shun the label feminist.
Yeah.
Why is that?
I think it's a hard word. It has so many connotations, and I think that it's still a movement that needs some work and needs some improvement and needs some, it's not perfect, and, imperfect. Bad Feminist is a great book by Roxane Gay. It talks about that too. And it was sort of one of the books that I read that sort of allowed me to understand that you don't have to be, this perfect, have this perfect idea of feminism when you declare yourself a label. And so I think people have, it's an imperfect movement, but also I think it has a lot of connotations that people shy away against as well.
Now, the experiences you write about, as I read your essays, the experiences that you write about really reminded me of episodes of the TV series Girls, which I don't watch with regularity, but I've read, I've watched some episodes and I've read about it, whose characters' lives are messy, embarrassing, but which occasionally result in some kinds of insights, and they all live in Brooklyn as well. Have you felt a connection?
I do get the comparison because I think that Girls brought about the idea into mainstream media that, girls don't have to be like these perfect. They make a lot of mistakes. They're kind of messy. They can be problematic. They can be unlikable. And they can, instead of being these sort of romantic comedy, beautiful, blonde, perfect women. And I think for that, I do sort of understand it. And I do understand the comparison. And although I don't, Girls isn't my favorite show in the world, it's brought about the idea that there's other voices that can be heard and there's other kinds of women out there. And I like that it sparked that conversation.
Now, your father is Irish, of Irish descent. Your mother's Puerto Rican.
Yes.
What identity did you choose when you were growing up in Westchester County?
You know what? It was hard to find a place, and I still struggle with that a lot because I've always described being, biracial as sort of being on a rooftop and looking at both sides of the street and just not really knowing which side you fit on. And when I was younger, I used to lovingly call myself a mutt because I just didn't feel like I was either. And then once I started embracing that I was both, I'm very comfortable now with being both. I mean, as a young woman, I felt more connected with being Latina, and I felt I identified as Latina. And then, the older I got, I kind of understood that being biracial is something a lot of women are and a lot of people are, and it's disingenuous for me not to declare myself as the both and the other. And so I think I try to just toe that line and understand that there's certain things, I look white, I'm biracial, and that's a unique experience that I can talk about. So that's sort of where I am now.
You write about the stupid things people say to you when they learn that you're biracial, or maybe when they can't figure out what you are.
Right. Yeah, it's odd. I think a lot of people, and I think something, people are always kind of struggling to label people and to understand where they are and to fit them into the boxes that they know about. And so a lot of people will kind of give me that look, and they'll be like, well, what are you, Armenian? Are you Greek? Or, they just kind of come out where I can only see the wheel. What are you? And it's like, well, I'm a lot of things. And sometimes people are kind of surprised, and then they'll be like, and they want to know a little more about it. And then sometimes I'll have kind of experiences where they wouldn't know that I was, not just white, and they would slip up and say things that would make me learn their character, which is sort of an interesting experience.
You write about in one of your chapters, you write about the embarrassment of buying feminine products.
Yes.
Whether it's Plan B or condoms or birth control pills or KY jelly. And you say we need to rid ourselves of shame over feminine products.
Well, it's so weird because when I was entering college, or when I was younger, I just always remember that there's a certain male pride to buying condoms. It's like a status symbol of like, good job, man. And I never felt that. Everyone was really nervous. It was like this secret thing, like a whisper for a lot of women. And then even just being young and talking about like, I have to get a tampon or I have to get a pad, and people would go like, oh, ew. And it's like there was an odd silence that I came to what everyone buys and what everyone purchases, and there's no judgment either way. It's not good or bad. It's just a fact of life. So it's a little odd that I have to like cover my tampons with paper towels at the Dwayne Reed because I don't want people to see it, when it's just like it's no different from buying Band-Aids.
So you advocate not doing that, not covering it, being out with your feminine products.
Being comfortable with it. It doesn't mean anything. It's just, some women buy it, some women don't. It's a grocery item. It's nothing.
You also talk about, while one may not want to show one's birth control pills, you talk about the magic of discovering birth control pills.
Yes. I wish that I knew more about it when I was younger, and I wish that I didn't have the education, I didn't have the sex education to know those others, where, I had very, very bad cramps when I first got my period, and my mother did too, and it was just like, I was like sitting on the bathroom floor, like in complete pain. And then when I went to the doctor, they told me that would fix it. It would be better. You'd get it every 28 days. And once I took that and it started becoming a regular thing in my life, and there was less pain. I couldn't believe that no one had told me before. It took me 25 years to figure that out when I had my period since I was 12. So it doesn't mean that I'm going to run around, like, I feel there's this stigma that I'm going to run around having sex, which I can if I want to, but it's like there's the lack of education to let me know that there's other reasons why people would take it. I didn't know about that.
There also seemed to be, I know when I was an adolescent, I mean, when I and my friends were starting to have our periods, there seemed to be a taboo on tampons.
Yeah.
As if, it's going to make you don't want to put anything there, maybe because they don't want you to know where it is.
Which is crazy. It's crazy, yes. I definitely remember having that conversation because I got my period when I was 12, and a lot of girls were getting it earlier and around that same time. And it was like, don't use tampons because then you won't be a virgin anymore. And I was like, but I just took a class about what that was, and that's not the answer. And there's always that, it's weird that there's that purity myth, and that there's the idea that, we have to remain completely untouched even by cotton products, which is like, kind of crazy.
And when you talk about sex education, you write that it has a different, and we didn't have any when I was growing up in Birmingham, but you write that it has a different impact on girls and boys. Girls are handed the burden of womanhood at the age 10, while boys get a glimpse of the keys to the kingdom.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. We were separated, which was an odd thing to me, because it created immediately that there was difference. And that was, in 5th grade, we were pulled away, and the guys were told that, it was immediately for the female education, and I was talking to my male friends at the time, and they were like, that's not what we learned. It was just the burden of childbirth, and like, if you have sex, you'll get pregnant, and it'll be painful, and it was just creating this idea that it was like a fearful thing, instead of, I think that, and when I took sex education when I was 16, which is when, kids are starting to think about having sex and maybe even having it, it was still that same idea where we just learned this kind of fearful thing and that we'd get sick, and we didn't learn those safety and consent, and that different people feel, different ways about sex, and still, I remember the men never had to watch the childbirth video, and the females did. It was just like a very odd way to separate what sex is, and yeah, guys were pretty excited about it, and girls were just like, it's going to super hurt, so I'm never having sex ever.
Someone once said, and I hope I get this right, that when kids want to know about sex, we preach them about birth control, and when they want to learn about birth control, we preach them about sex. And
oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that sounds about right.
So you also write about what I guess some would call the beauty trap. Women being controlled by how society says they ought to look.
Yeah, I mean, it's an odd thing, because before I was a feminist, I sort of shied away from makeup and hair and all those kinds of things, and I love that thing. I love makeup. I'm wearing a lot because I felt the negative connotations of the women have to be beautiful, and they have to be, and it's like it represents some aspect of our intelligence to want to look attractive, and I just, after I became a feminist, and after I just feel more comfortable with those ideas of just wanting to look attractive is okay, but it shouldn't be something that controls us. We should be able to do it because we like it. And I think that is something that takes a long time to learn, and it's kind of bums me out.
Tell me about MAC Cyber Lipstick.
Oh, yes. That was, I had never really worn lipstick that much. It was like a burden to me, because I would have to put it on when I was like in weddings when I was like 15 or something, and I never liked it. And I was working as an assistant, and I just felt kind of bad about myself, and I wanted to like feel prettier somehow. And I went to this store, and I saw MAC Cyber Lipstick, which was deep purple and horribly unflattering. It would look terrible on me, and I would look like a ghoul. And I loved it. And I felt this connection of like, I want to look the way I want to look, even though I know that people are going to go like, that's not the most like flattering thing on you. And I bought it, and I wore it all the time, and I absolutely loved it. And I think there's like a certain power for me to just look how I want to look and present to the world the way I want to be. And I think everyone's kind of looking for that. So it was something that I felt a lot of people could relate to, in the sense of talking about that ugly lipstick.
One of the lessons of your book is that women should always treat each other the way they treat each other in bathroom bars or in bar bathrooms.
Yes. It's such a weird, friendly zone there. And I really don't like crowded bars that much. I think I'd rather just have a glass of wine at home or with friends. But in the bathroom is like this weird zone where women are super nice to each other. Everyone's helping each other out. You get a million compliments. And I kind of brought this up, and girls would just be like, oh, I totally know what you mean. And I think that's reason why it's sort of memorable is because there's such a hesitation, I think, when women meet each other in sort of the real world. Because
sort of checking each other out.
Right. It's like, are you my competition? What are you to me? Who are you? Do you not like me? And I think that you kind of drop that in there for whatever reason.
Why? Is it because we're drunk, or what is it?
Well, certainly it's because we're drunk, but also because it's just this untouched zone. No one else is there but females, and I think it's just like this little 30-second interaction where we have to sort of all help each other out because there's like 70 people waiting online, and you got to get in and out, and for some reason it creates this really nice environment. I don't understand it, but it's certainly nice.
Okay. We're going to take a short break, then we'll be back with Alida Nugent, author of You Don't Have to Like Me, Growing Up, Speaking Out, and Finding Feminism, after this message. Welcome back to One to One. I'm talking with Alida Nugent, author of You Don't Have to Like Me, Growing Up, Speaking Out, and Finding Feminism. You write that until you became a feminist at age 21, you were something of a jerk towards other women. You didn't use the word jerk, but that was basically what you meant. You said the first thing you do as a girl trying to be cool is betray women everywhere.
I just was I wanted to be the cool girl so badly. I wanted to be the one that, I started out at school doing a lot of comedy, doing a lot of stand-up, and doing comedy is sort of a male-dominated field in many ways, and it shouldn't be, and it's becoming different now. But it was at the time and was at my school. And I just wanted to be that girl that everyone thought was really cool, and I wanted to be cool with guys. And in my mind, and I think a lot of women's, is that sort of divorce from being a female, and in the idea that I'm not one of those like regular girls that just like loves drama and, is going to cry all the time. You kind of take those stereotypes and say, I'm not that. And in a way, and I had female friends, but I was just always trying to be different and trying to be cooler. And that really hurt me a lot when I was younger, because when you say that you're not like those kinds of girls, you're not like, this crying drama queen, you're sort of admitting those stereotypes are real or enforcing them in people's minds. And it's just not fair for me. And it's not fair for the other women in my life and any woman.
Okay. So what turned you into a feminist, and what does it mean to you?
It was like kind of a slow process, and I just never really understood the word, and as sort of it became a little more popular, a little more talked about, I sort of understood it wasn't just like the ideas that I had heard of in the past. It was just about equality and just making sure that you can make the choices that you want to make as a woman. And after a while, I just got a little bit older and a little bit wiser, and sort of realized that I want to be the same. I want to be considered, I want to be respected, and I want to be treated and paid and, given the same respect and courtesy that a man would. And that's sort of what I'm just kind of hoping to express in the book, and sort of how I define myself as a feminist is that.
And you say, when you believe in feminists, you believe that women should get a fair shot. That's basically it.
That's it.
It would seem inevitable, given the kinds of experiences that women share, that young women would inevitably become feminists, but that doesn't always happen.
No, and I think there's a lot of reasons why, and I sort of like want to get the idea that you can be a feminist and you can feel different things about different, there's not like one book that's like all correct and everyone has to follow this like rule book. And I think that there's a lot of women who have valid concerns about feminism. I think that a lot of the idea of it being sort of like leaving a lot of other kinds of women out, whether it's women of color, whether it's transgendered women, that's a valid criticism in a lot of circles that I've seen, and a lot of pieces and definitions of feminism. So I understand that there is certain criticisms that do exist and are valid. And then there's some that, it's like, well, can I be a housewife, or can I have kids, or can I want to, can I like men? And it's like, of course, yes, you can do all the things that you want to do. It's all about that you have the choices and you have the information and the access to make those choices.
Bulimia is often described as one of the perils of the beauty trap, and you were bulimic for a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's an odd thing. I mean, I was young and I had it for a few, 5 or 6 years, and it was that pressure. It's a pressure to feel like attractive and that kind of idea of the beauty trap. But it was also something that was just common, and that I had heard about it, and that it was something that wasn't even, I told friends in high school sometimes, and they were like, oh, well, you got to do what you got to do to be skinny. And that was sort of like it's a very real thing that happens to a lot of women, because people want females and to look skinny and to look thin. And it's sort of it occurs because of that sometimes. So it was odd that I felt so normal for a while. And it still feels normal in the sense that I say that I've had it, and a lot of women have. Mm-hmm. And it shouldn't be normal.
I guess it's probably impossible to get through womanhood without knowing about salmon and the juice fast. And I certainly know about salmon and the juice fast.
It's kind of funny because after having, an eating disorder that's so obviously labeled as something that's unhealthy and no one would advocate for that kind of thing. And then when I was trying to like kind of get thin or thinner in a healthier way, I don't know one woman who hasn't been on a diet. And sometimes, eating healthy is a good thing. And eating, there's a certain base of knowledge that people should have, man or woman, about what's healthy for you and what you should put in your body. But the idea of that kind of extreme dieting is so common with females. And it's just like the idea of eating, like everyone knows, like the fistful of salmon, the juice, the handful of nuts before you go to a party. There's all these like rules that I don't know a woman who doesn't know them, which is kind of an interesting thing.
You expressed a pet peeve of mine, which is you're walking around and all of these guys are telling you to smile.
Yeah.
What is that about?
I don't know, and I really hate it. I think it's just one of those things that it's sort of accepted in society, and it's just, whether it has insidious purposes every time, maybe not. But it's certainly something bothersome, and it's sort of accepted as this like, oh, you just get it's just the way what happens when you walk around. And I don't think it should be. It's very bizarre to go to like, put your hair in a bun and like run out to the grocery with no makeup and have like men tell you to smile or that you look sexy or come home with me. And it's like, do you think that's gonna work? Obviously not. It's like a power thing, but it's, yeah.
I get the feeling that there's something that men feel that the world is out of kilter if women do not seem happy. If they don't act happy, and that they must act happy, otherwise they must be dissatisfied, and something terrible is going to happen, and it's your obligation to be upbeat and happy all the time.
Definitely. That's sort of where the title of the book came from, where it was like, I tried for so many years to be likable, and then I realized that not everyone's going to like me, and not everyone's going to think that I'm great, and that likability and happiness for a female aren't the only things that you have to exude to be a successful, ambitious human.
You were lucky with your father.
Yeah, he was a good guy. He is a good guy. He was just intent on raising me the same way that he raised my brother, and making sure that I had all of the privileges and rights and education and that my brother had. So it was just like a nice thing. I don't think he would define himself as a feminist if I asked him. And I think that's something that, men don't, if they don't choose to define themselves as feminists, it's like, that's okay, in the sense that they can look at females as equals and treat them in a certain way that kind of shows those actions.
At the bottom of page 141, you describe the advice you would give to women, and I'd like to ask you to read it for us.
My advice: work your ass off. Find a shade of lipstick that you really love and pray it doesn't get discontinued. Ask someone out. If you don't want to go out on Saturday, don't, and don't feel guilty. Eat your vegetables. Say yes if the worst thing that can happen is you will fail. Learn to throw things out. Get renter's insurance. Read as many books as you can. Get a little more sleep. Take a jacket. Only say I'm sorry when you really mean it. Get what you really want by being authoritative and firm. Put a pinch of nutmeg in your roux. Bring extra socks when packing. Save your money. Get taxis when it is late. Go for seconds. Kiss often. Be more fearless, not more reckless. Take the steps to change. Admit when you are wrong. Buy a screwdriver. Make your bed. Pay your bills on time. Remember you are worthwhile and important. Make yourself happy.
I think it's good advice, and it's an amusing book and has a lot of insights as well.
Thank you.
So thank you for that, and thank you for coming today.
Thanks for having me.
Alida Nugent, her new book, You Don't Have to Like Me, Essays on Growing Up, Speaking Out, and Finding Feminism, has just been published by the Plume imprint of Penguin Random House. For the City University of New York and 1-to-1, I'm Sheryl McCarthy. If there are any people you'd like to hear from or topics you'd like us to explore, please let us know. You can write to me at CUNY TV, 365 Fifth Avenue, New York, New York, 10016, or you can go to the website at cuny.tv and click on Contact Us. I look forward to hearing from you.